These were threats that were located in the region.
Threats in the region. If you don't live in Washington, here's the translation. That would be in hostile Middle Eastern countries, places where American troops would never be in the first place were it not for the insistent demands of non-geniuses like Max Boot and John Bolton. But never mind. No one in Washington is in mood for big picture questions right now, questions the obvious ones like, is Iran really the greatest threat we face, and who's actually benefiting from this? And why are we continuing to ignore the decline of our own country in favor of jumping into another quagmire from which there is no obvious exit? By the way, if we're still in Afghanistan 19 sad years later, what makes us think there's a quick way out of Iran? And so on. Nobody is thinking like that right now. Instead, chest beaters like Senator Ben Sasse of Nebraska are making the usual warlike noises, the ones they always make. This is very simple, Ben Sasse wrote in a statement last night. General Soleimani is dead because he was an evil bastard who murdered Americans, which is essentially true. Soleimani was certainly a bad guy. But does that make killing him, quote, very simple? It does not. Nothing about life, and certainly nothing about killing, is ever very simple, and any politician who tells you otherwise is dumb or is lying. Yes, Soleimani was linked to the deaths of Americans. Nobody mourns his passing. But Mexico and China are also linked to the deaths of Americans. Each has flooded our country with narcotics from which tens of thousands of Americans die every single year. Not that anyone in power cares. So does that mean we get to bomb Oaxaca? Can we start assassinating generals in the People's Liberation Army? Maybe. Maybe Ben Sasse will call for that too. He's a former consultant and a very tough character.
Do you realize how misguided Trump has to be to get Tucker Carlson to condemn him on the air? This is a guy whose business model is mainstreaming white supremacy and profiting off of pure hatred and bigotry. Tucker said white supremacy was, quote, not a real problem in the United States only days after a mass shooting in El Paso, Texas, where the shooter wrote a manifesto decrying the, quote, Hispanic invasion of Texas. He called Democratic House Intelligence Committee Chairman Adam Schiff mentally ill. He said immigrants would make the country, quote, poorer and dirtier. On a radio show, Carlson condemned the confirmation of Supreme Court Justice Elena Kagan because he didn't find her attractive and said women are, quote, extremely primitive and, quote, just need to be quiet. At least 34 advertisers have dropped their sponsorship of Tucker's show on Fox. And yet for that guy to sound reasonable relative to Trump is a testament to just how frighteningly unfit the current president is to oversee our military, to have the nuclear codes, and to generally hold office in this country. Tucker's comments come on the heels of Trump's decision to order the assassination of Iran's most powerful general and number 2 in command, Soleimani. The move was praised by a host of Trump's most loyal sycophants, people like Fox News' Brian Kilmeade and Mike Pence and Lindsey Graham, all of whom pointed to the fact that Soleimani was a brutal, murderous individual directly and indirectly responsible for the loss of countless American lives. And he was, indisputably, but if the point is to protect American lives, how is assassinating a head of state of a hostile adversary going to accomplish that? Iran has already vowed retaliation. Our diplomats and embassies and foreign service officers and military personnel are all in immediate danger as a direct result of this. The unequivocal truth about this entire campaign is that while the administration is pretending that the world is automatically a safer place, Americans are decidedly less safe because of it. And what's worse, as if we need this situation to be any worse, is that we haven't even been given a reason. The only way that Trump would be able to launch a strike without approval from Congress is if there was an imminent threat. And yet still, days later, the White House has refused to release even a single detail of what the supposed imminent threat was. Even Defense Department officials have claimed that they knew of only general threats, and a correspondent for the New York Times who spoke with intelligence officials claimed that evidence suggesting an imminent attack on American targets by Iran to be, quote, razor thin. But hey, what could possibly go wrong by just blindly trusting Donald Trump, the same guy who drew on a weather map with a Sharpie to invent a hurricane warning and then demanded that the rest of his administration pretend that it was real? I mean, this administration literally had the audacity to claim that assassinating a top-ranking foreign official was an act of de-escalation. They then ordered American citizens to leave Iraq, deployed 3,500 more troops to the Middle East, and have begun more bombings in the region. Yep. Textbook de-escalation. Of course, Trump's moves did manage to accomplish something in that it offers a momentary distraction from his own impeachment. And in case you would clutch your pearls at the very notion that the President of the United States would actually risk war with a hostile foreign power to benefit him politically, we already know that that's exactly how Trump views this situation.
Our President will start a war with Iran because he has absolutely no ability to negotiate. he's weak and he's ineffective. So the only way he figures that he's going to get reelected, and as sure as you're sitting there, is to start a war with Iran.
He showed his hand. That military conflict against Iran is what he views as a re-election strategy. And so now, here we are, only days into an election year, and right on cue, Trump has launched an attack against Iran. I wonder why. The simple fact is that while Trump may pretend that this act is going to make the world more peaceful, it has already made it more dangerous. It has already escalated the very endless war in the Middle East that he campaigned on ending. So he might try and gaslight the American people by claiming that he ordered this assassination to stop the bloodshed, but every indicator is pointing to the fact that it's going to get far worse before it ever gets better.